Watch the Wonder Space show on Saturdays at 12 noon only on Channel 1 TV.
What are you doing in the kitchen? If you want to come to my house and touch things, you need to ask permission from me. I know it's your father's house, but it's been willed to me. I own this house now.
You call this a house? This thing? Don't worry, eh?
Go to a better place.
Oh, don't worry. Okasawa.
Why you who say you want to move me and say tea bread? What the number one now? What they but we need to
We are very, very okay.
Oh,
very, very okay.
We okay, Ampa.
Hey, Kaka. Kaka, you good?
Shall I talk? Not the right paper. I pass finish.
Menya bema opese oye me ho ade.
Hey!
Crossed by blood. Oh, I crossed by blood.
Hello there, welcome to another season of the Oxfam Tax Dialogue. Here it is an interactive and insightful platform where we look at all the tax policies of the country, get to understand the tax structure of Ghana, and also look at how sustainable they are if they best fit the current dispensation. But more importantly, create that awareness and education in helping you understand the tax policies of the country and also how you as a citizen can also fulfill the obligation when it comes to honoring your tax responsibilities as a citizen. And that, for that matter, is for the greater good of all of us as a country for national and socio-economic development. My name is Nii Addo. I'm your host. Thank you so much for joining us. If you are watching us on TV, this is Channel 1 TV. If you tuned in on radio, this is 97.3 CTFM. We are taking a break. When we come back, I'll introduce my guests, introduce the topic for today's discussion, and we'll set the ball rolling. Don't go away. Thank you for staying with us here on Channel 1 TV and 97.3 CTFM. Like I mentioned to you earlier, this is the Oxfam Tax Dialogue. This is the first in series of many to come on this channel as well as this platform if you stay with us throughout this period as we look at the tax architecture of the country. My name is Nii Addo. How are we starting off? We are kicking off trying to get a good sense of what progressive taxation is, and that is the topic on the table for today. My guests, two fine brains in the tax system of the country, they are here to really appreciate what progressive taxation is, what it means, the various legs of progressive taxation, and how we can tap into the numerous benefits when it comes to progressive taxation. On my far left is Nii Addo, Executive Director for Green Tax Youth Africa. Nii Addo, you are not new on this platform. Good to see you. We meet on a yearly basis. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, and greetings to you. It's a new year.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a new year,
Yeah.
and good to see you. Nii.
Yeah, good to see you. Good to see
Well,
you.
next to me is Mary Darko, Associate Director, PricewaterhouseCoopers, that's PwC. But for the purposes of this discussion, you are representing the Society for Women in Taxation.
Yes, that's correct.
Good to see you, Mary. Welcome.
Good to see you too. Thank you.
I want to start with you, Mary. We've heard taxation. We've heard progressive taxation. When we say progressive taxation, what are we talking about?
All right. So thank you, Nii, for that question. So to begin, I would want to, because there are two terms that we are looking at here, progressive taxation. So I want to take it from the taxation side first, and then I'll come to the progressive aspect. So when we talk about taxes, what is taxes? So if you ask the ordinary person on the street, what is tax? I'm sure apart from the sentiments or the emotions that they would attach to it, they will not be able to really tell you what a tax is. So if you are looking at the OECD classification for taxes, taxes are defined as a mandatory contribution or a mandatory payment that is unrequited. So the two characteristics of taxes is that they are mandatory. Mandatory because they are supported by the law, and it's not a voluntary contribution that one makes. And unrequited because when you make the payment, the returns or the benefit that comes to you are not really proportional to how much you pay. So I feel that it's important to actually lay this foundation before we go to progressive taxation. So when we talk about progressive taxation, we are looking at the tax design or the way the tax is administered, such that instead of having like one rate that is applicable to income, there are different rates applicable to different levels of income. So as a person's income rises, the tax rate also increases. The nature of it is such that it reduces the burden of tax on low income earners and then increase or puts a lot of burden for those who are wealthy or those who can actually afford to pay more taxes. So the best illustration I can give for it is when you are taking a staircase, where every step that you take actually represents an additional income or an incremental income. And for each of these steps or staircases, there is an incremental rate of tax that applies to that income. So if you're standing up there or you're a wealthy person, the higher your income, the higher the rate of tax that you'd also have to pay. Whereas those who are at the bottom gets to then pay something lower. So it's a way of ensuring that the rich or the wealthy contribute more to society, and then there's a bit of relief given to those who are low income earners.
So simply put, the more you earn, the more you must pay when it comes to taxes.
Yes.
And so we will tax the rich to subsidize the poor.
That's it.
I see. And so before you continue, let me come to you, Nii. How different is it in terms of structure, designing the tax, administering it, comparing it to flat tax system?
All right, so I mean, before I let me just say something that Benjamin Franklin said. Benjamin Franklin said that, I mean, it's either you are dead or you are paying tax. So when you are not dead and you are alive, it means that you are paying tax. All right, so it means that tax is a mandatory thing that you have to pay. And is used in different ways. Now, she has explained the tax and the types. Let's look at taxes in the nature of it being flat or it being progressive. Now, the flat tax system is just like a regressive tax system. It's whether you are, so let's say that you put 2% on it, whether you are poor or you are rich, all of you are paying 2%. It means that it doesn't favor a certain group of people. And so you need to look at it from an angle where the ability to pay principal comes in, and that is the progressive nature. So as you grow in your income, we always say that, okay, so you start a business with 2 cedis, but you don't want to be at that level of 2 to 5 cedis. You want to go to 10 cedis. So it means that your profit returns are growing. So as you are gaining more, you are paying more, so that you lessen the burden on those who don't have. So the difference between the flat system is that it helps the rich because it's flat and the poor must pay. But when it's progressive in nature, it favors the poor, and then the rich also end up paying more to harness development.
But with this explanation that you gave, I want to also believe that it means that progressive tax will not cut across all forms of tax categories. For example, if it's a consumption tax like VAT, progressive tax will not work there. And so maybe progressive tax will work on something like income tax. So beyond these two examples that I have cited, maybe help us really appreciate when it comes to the categories of taxes that best fit progressive tax and those ones that best fit, flat tax. How progressive or how retrogressive is each one of these categories? I don't know if my question is clear.
Should I?
Oh, you
okay.
can go ahead.
So because of the question, I want to take it from a progressive and a regressive point.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. So, for instance, a progressive tax, you don't transfer it to anybody. So, like the income, the PIT, and all, they are yours and they are deducted from source. But the regressive tax are the taxes like the VAT, which is transferred to the end user. So, for instance, I go and buy something in the market and you put a tax of 5 cedis on it. When I come, I make sure that after calculating all the taxes that you have done, the one who is coming to consume the product end up paying it. So it means that it doesn't favor the poor. It doesn't favor the rich. You transfer all the strength in terms of the tax payment to whoever is going to consume. At the end of the day, you end up, let me say, the government like the low-hanging fruits, where the taxes by nature are regressive, and that is where you always get your money. But the hanging fruit that is low doesn't favor certain group or category of people. When you look at a lot of money that is coming into the system, it is coming from the industries. And the industries are the places where government must place the agenda. For instance, maybe you have Talu. Okay, so the recent issue about how much money we've lost. It also boils down to your regulatory system, your frameworks. All right. So ensure that you have a system that is progressive in nature, ensuring that you take more money from the rich and lessen the burden on the poor. Don't transfer the burden rather to the poor by having a regressive tax system.
I see. And so the explanation also provided is more about social and income inequalities, trying to bridge the gap. But we want to take a break. When we come back, Mary will explain to us how a progressive tax system helps address, the income inequalities, social inequalities, but mind you, how that will also help balance revenue generation and the provision of public goods and services. This is the Oxfam Tax Dialogue on 97.3 CTFM and Channel 1 TV. Welcome back to the Oxfam Tax Dialogue here on Channel 1 TV and 97.3 CTFM. My name is Neela Tilate. We are talking about progressive taxation. My guest, Mary Darko from the Society of Women in Taxation, as well as Nii Addo from the Green Tax Youth Africa. And they are helping us understand what progressive taxation is. They've laid a foundation, told us the various dynamics of progressive taxation. Now we are delving into how it helps address the issue of income and social inequality vis-a-vis, the issue of revenue generation and how the government will rely on such a tax system for the provision of public goods and services. So, Mary, take us on this journey. We are trying to help address an issue which more often than not is about the inequalities when it comes to the payment of taxes. And that's why progressive taxation is one of the fundamental elements in a proper tax system, for the want of a better word. And so if we are trying to help address such an issue, how does the government do it in ensuring that they don't lose out on revenue? Because the majority of the people are those in the lower to middle income bracket. And so if progressive taxation is dependent heavily on the rich and we leave the poor who are in the majority, how does the government get that revenue to carry out its mandate?
All right, so thank you for that question. So in every economy or in every society where there is a difference between the rich and the poor, and you can find it everywhere. The progressive nature of taxation, I believe, will be the most appropriate system to administer taxes. So by taxing the poor using a lower rate of income, hopefully they can get a bit more disposable income. So if they earn income and they get taxed at a lower rate, there is a bit more money, hopefully, that is left for them to then take care of their necessities or take care of the things that they need. They can also save. And then gradually, hopefully, if they use the money well, that is, if they're able to go past their basic necessities and save something extra.
The two of you are smiling. I don't know what is going through your head. Maybe you should explain to us.
And save something extra. Then they can then use that extra income to open up a business, to go into an enterprise and increase their income. By doing that, hopefully they'll be able to move from the lower income brackets to the middle income brackets. And this was made possible because the rich were funding them. The rich were paying more by way of taxes. So the rich were the ones funding the infrastructure, making available school, paying for free SHS because hopefully they are paying what they are required to pay. And then the poor, because of the relief that they are getting, hopefully the extra income that they make by not contributing it to taxes will then be used to then lift them from where they currently are into middle income. And then as they move into middle income, they will then get to contribute more to government revenue. And hopefully they would also move to a higher income earning bracket and also contribute more.
I'm just interested in knowing how the rates, when it comes to progressive taxation, can be calibrated to ensure this fairness and equity that we are talking about. Because the ordinary Ghanaian thinks that, well, even if I pay my taxes, the government will not utilize it well. Why should I go ahead and pay it? And even if the taxes are made friendlier, they will not go ahead and pay the taxes. So
to that question, that's where it takes me back to the definition of taxes that I gave. So it's a mandatory contribution. You don't have that free. It's not a voluntary contribution from your side. It's actually backed by the laws. And our legislature is the one that is empowered to pass these laws. So as a citizen or as a Ghanaian, your responsibility in the first place is to ensure that you are complying with these taxes. Once you've done that, then the next question is then how the taxes are used.
So you can demand accountability.
Exactly. But first of all, you comply. Do your part as a citizen of the country. And then hopefully the systems within the country, the accountability systems would also ensure that these taxes are used very well and there is no wastages within the system. But please, let's do our part first.
Mary says do your part before you can go in for the accountability bit of the tax conversation. But Nii, I don't know if you have something to add on to the questions I've put to Mary.
Well, I think when you talk about taxes, this is an interesting conversation. Nobody wants to pay tax. Even it's cut across everywhere, especially when you don't know what your taxes are being used for. So you don't want to pay. But as also she said, it's mandatory. That is something that we need to understand, that it is based on your taxes that some people who are working in the public services are being paid. For instance, of all the money that we collect, 60% of those taxes goes into compensation.
Wages and salaries.
Wages and salaries. So if you are not paying your taxes, somebody is working, the person is not going to be paid. Okay, so it's very important for us to look at it from all the other angles. Especially, the country is also in debt. Out of your taxes, debts are being paid. So procurement, other things are procured to run the country. These are all issues that when you think about them as an individual, you need to realize that, well, we need taxes to run the country.
And it's good you've mentioned the bit that taxes are also used in paying debts. And so, for example, at a time where we have issues of high debt levels, high inflationary rates, difficult economic situation, especially when the global economic outlook remains uncertain. We have a new government coming in promising to, rationalize the taxes that we have in the country, also remove some taxes, key amongst them being the e-levy and COVID-19 levy. What are your general thoughts about the new government that we have on our hands? Its promise to rationalize the taxes, remove these taxes. How will it ensure that it deals with the high debt payments that we have to make, the difficult economic situation that we have, and tie it into a progressive taxation lens? Who wants to take this first shot?
It's an interesting question, Nee. So, for me, I think the whole thing about rationalizing it is just putting brains to it. It's not anything. It's not going to be anything new. It's just putting brains to it, because there have been times we've spoken about earmarking. Let your taxes work. So if we are generating such and such amount of money, there's a need for us to get some reports back that this is the amount of money that is being generated as a country. Can we do more? Can we ease it on the lower income bracket? Now, scrapping or the e-levy and then the COVID levy. I think the COVID levy, I mean, it's outlived its usefulness.
But there are conversations about rechanneling the COVID-19 levy into something like NHIS, or even the issue of kidney and what was the word?
Dialysis.
Dialysis.
Well, let's be frank that even what we are paying, we don't know where the channels are going. Something like excise tax on tobacco and sugar sweetened beverages. The monies that are coming, where are they going? They are going into the consolidated fund. We don't know what amount has been earmarked for those communicable disease, non-communicable disease. So first take it off. Then we can have a judge, or we can have a consultation. We can talk about it that, okay, this is what we want to do with the money. So that when you are bringing another tax handle to ensure that it caters for emergencies, it caters for pandemics, we know that that is it. And we know how much money has gone in there at the end of the period. Look at the electronic levy, for instance. I mean, in this age of ICT, where algorithm is, is put in place, if I transfer money from my own account into a Momo, I'm being charged. The algorithm cannot say that, oh, this is my name and this is my number. When I transfer money from my account to a different account, so much amount of money is taken out. So the electronic levy itself, it has not been properly structured. What it's important is that in the regressive nature, it is always been transferred to the consumer, the end user, the one who is using it. Meanwhile, the telcos, they are benefiting because they charge it. So can government say that instead of the telcos being, instead of us being paying the money, we are going to charge it on the telcos to ensure that they contribute in that regard to the national kitty. Okay, so for me, that whole idea of scrubbing some, I think we need a proper consultation around those conversations to ensure we take it to the next level. Secondly, on the issue about emission levy, that is going to be, for me, I think that kind of levy, we need a consultation, a proper consultation around it. It is not to scrap it because of the emerging issues of climate change. Because when you look at the green economy, a lot of things are shifting. And you might not want to scrap something that you have not done due diligence or proper consultation on.
I know you have spoken at length, but I'm sure Mary has something to add on, even as we wrap up this conversation and conclude. And so how do you see the conversation about scrapping some of these taxes? How progressive or retrogressive are they? And what are some of the best practices global-wise that Ghana can learn if it wants to, consolidate its fiscal issues, add on revenue generation, and better its progressive taxation regime? Okay. I'm giving the final words to you.
All right, sure. Thank you. So to start off, if you look at the NDC manifesto, Resetting Ghana, they mentioned that within the first 100 days, they are going to scrap e-levy, COVID-19 recovery levy, and some other taxes. So counting from 7th of January,
when the president was sworn in.
Exactly. Ghanaians are eagerly waiting for that to happen. If you ask me from a personal perspective, of course, it's going to ease my pocket. So I'll say that, yes, let's go for it. However, I think the government also needs to be careful to ensure that the deficit that we have is not widened. Because currently our expenditure, based on the 2024 budget, our expenditure is higher than our revenue and grants.
Yeah, it has always been.
It has always been, exactly. So you wouldn't want to make the deficit even larger. So to implement this, there has to be some compensating measures to make sure that by scrapping these taxes, that deficit is not going to grow. That's the first. Now, the second one is, as we know, the e-levy was introduced basically to increase government's revenue mobilization efforts. There was a lot of public outcry when it came, and then it was subsequently reduced from the 1.5 to 1%. the 1%. So even though, based on our discussion, we've said that it's a regressive tax because it doesn't take into account how much revenue or how much income the person has. It's the same flat tax that applies to it. But also, sometimes we sacrifice, I would say, simplicity for progressive nature of tax. If you want to make it progressive, it's going to be a bit more complex, and administration and implementation is also going to be something else. So sometimes that's why we have that 1% rates applying to it. Now, back to the question on best practices and what Ghana can do. If you look at the developed countries, some of their top contributors to revenue mobilization is PAYE.
Yeah. Pay as you earn.
Pay as you earn, followed by VAT. And we also see that trend in the OECD countries. Given that Ghana is aiming to be a developed country, I believe, these are the two main taxes that we also need to be focusing on. And that seems to be the current trend. We seem to be on the right path because we have like 7 tiers for progressive PAYE from 0% all the way to 35%. Which, if you look at it within the region, is not over the top, neither is it at the bottom. Some countries' marginal rate is 25%, which is at the lower end. Others are 45%, like South Africa. The Liberia one is 25%, which is at the lower. Tanzania has 30%. Kenya, I think, is about 35%. So we are within the middle. And it's not over the top. So we're actually on course. The next one is the VAT, which is another top contributor for the developed countries, which we currently have. But I think that the VAT system needs a bit of overhaul because it's currently operating between a VAT regime and a sales tax regime. But in most countries, they either implement a sales regime or sales tax regime or the VAT regime. But currently, we are doing kind of a hybrid. So I think that there is a need to streamline it to make sure that if we are following the VAT system, we go fully with that. And then if we are going with the sales tax, we also, there's not much time for me to dwell into this, but let me
the
just
series
pause
hasn't
here.
ended. There is more to come. So I'm hoping that we're going to have you again in another episode, depending on the topic, where you give us all the information that we need. But thank you so much, Mary. Thank you so much, Nii Addo. This has been another episode, the first, of course, of the Oxfam Tax Dialogue, the 2025 season on Channel 1 TV, as well as 97.3 City FM. My guest, Nii Addo, Executive Director, Green Tax Youth Africa, as well as Mary Darko from the Society of Women in Taxation. She's also an Associate Director at PricewaterhouseCoopers, that's PwC. My name is Nii Latte. We are not done. We'll come your way some other time with another exciting and educative episode of the Oxfam Tax Dialogue. Thank you so much for watching and listening.
What are you doing in the kitchen?
You ain't gonna cut. Oh, damn it, was it?
If you want to come to my house and touch things, you need to ask permission from me. I know it's your father's house, but it's been willed to me. I own this house now.
You call this a house? This thing. Don't worry, eh?
Go to a better place.
Oh, don't worry. Okasawa.
Why you who say you want to say tea bread? What the number one now? What they ban? We need pediatre to say.
We are very, very okay.
Oh.
Very, very okay.
We okay, Ampa.
Kaka, you good? Shall I talk? Not the right paper. I pass finish.
Menya bema opese oye me ho ade.
Crossed by blood. Oh, I crossed by blood.